Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. That's another huge freaking fish.
I really never hear any rumblings of a state like Arizona being known for its incredible fishing, especially when stacked up to some of its northern neighbors. But this place, it's been stuck in my mind now for a long time, and I knew I needed to make my way back. With over half of the 48th state being classified as arid and semi-arid, this can seem like an awfully strange place if you consider yourself an angler. The knee-jerk of public perception tends to label the Grand Canyon state as just another desert. For those bold enough to follow your ears and seek out the trail less followed, you'll see that God truly enriches this mysterious land.
Wow.
Emerald green water with that.
That's pretty nice. It definitely doesn't suck.
Your eyes can feast upon thousands of miles of cold, clean, and clear water meandering through pine flats and red rocks alike. Boundless is truly the best way to describe the opportunities for anglers willing to embrace a little bit of adventure. Be it tiny trickles running out of the surrounding mountains or deep canyon rivers cutting their way through the rocky crag, there's a lot of water. Finding where to fish, that can be the easy part. Getting there, that's what separates the wheat from the chaff. Ankle-breaking angles tend to be sharper than the cactus clawing at your body, and very real danger can always be waiting around that next river bend.
Holy sh! That was a mountain lion.
So you might be wondering, is the juice really worth the squeeze? When you compare the rare native trout species holding out in their isolated drainages to the potential for monstrous non-native fish species dominating the big water, there is such a wide range of angling opportunities for any interest level.
That is such a specimen, man. Crawdad fed and absolutely good to go.
Between backpacking, truck camping, and simple day trips, I will be joined by some of my best fishy friends to hunt down the unique fly fishing experiences throughout the desert state and trying to document them all. Folks, this is going to be one entire month fly fishing Arizona. I hope you enjoy because it all starts right now. When I first touched down, the owner of the ranch informed me that spring so far had been unseasonably windy. Seeking respite from the whipping wind, the two barn cats and soon-to-be friends hunkered down on the deck and looked on with curiosity as I unpacked my truck. With a staggering number of adventures on the horizon and yet another season on the road in full force, trying to plan out every detail can become a bit overwhelming. However, it's moments like this where I seem to return to some sort of center and am reminded how truly lucky I am. Not quite sure how I fell ass backwards into following a real passion, but I can specifically remember the smell of sage and a smile tugging at my cheeks as the sun sank below the hills. As nice as it was to be in the present and enjoy the beauty in front of me, my first outing was on the horizon and I needed to get packed. Fishing and filming in the backcountry is always an interesting balancing game because you will always need the essentials like your tent, extra clothes, food, and a sleeping kit. But for me, things always start to get out of control when you add all sorts of extra fishing gear that more often than not will never be used. And then of course you always have the unnecessary and always heavy camera gear, add in some survival essentials, first aid, and then some cooking supplies. And this is a recipe for a heavy hike and a bad back. I get approached a lot about what I carry and more importantly why, and I'm always so hesitant to offer my advice because backcountry adventures are so subjective. I clearly pack in too much weight just to be able to successfully fish and film. As some of you watching may know, I train specifically for this kind of activity, so the extra weight doesn't bother me all that much. What I'm trying to say is be sure your backcountry kit is tailored specifically to you and whatever goal you're trying to achieve. Early that next morning, the drone of rumble strips kept me focused on this mostly uneventful drive-in. Somewhat surprised and mostly relieved, I rolled up to a completely empty trailhead. Now, it would be a stretch to call this uneven gravel clearing a parking lot, but it seemed like it could hold a few vehicles if needed. All I cared was that it could hold one more because I wouldn't be alone for long. I'd arrived a couple minutes early, which allowed for my stiff back to get some much needed attention before the pain and suffering would begin. I'd just about wrapped up my stretching routine when the distant pop of gravel tickled my ears. My brother in arms for the next few days had finally arrived, and now the hike-in could begin. All right, got Jack, got the bags. Trailhead is right there, but we have quite a bit of walking to do, so we're gonna do some in a second. Let's get to hiking. Not so easy.
Yeah, I at least respect him too, because at least he's actually doing his job.
Yeah.
Just like the scale of it all.
It's huge. It's so fucking
Yeah, I've got a. Damn, I wish you would have told me you could have used some backpacking gear, because I literally have a small-ish sleeping bag in my truck right now.
But yeah, they talk about that and how like busy the rivers got after.
The weather's dang nice. It is.
It's always hard to judge that. Like
No, I get that.
sometimes it's like something. We're gonna have ourselves a dry fly day.
I wouldn't mind a dry fly day.
Come on, dude, they're hitting the surface fucking everywhere.
Holy smokes, yeah they are. We're going upstream, right?
That is upstream. We're gonna go downstream. We can go upstream, but
Oh shit, okay. I thought we were gonna, okay. That works. I don't know why, but I figured. That's just more so what I'm used to going. Wow,
emerald green water with that above it.
that's pretty nice.
If you were to smash these two together, would either side fit perfectly, you know? Like a couple
Yeah.
piece?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, relatively, you know, because
I mean, it's following the shape of the...
yeah.
A kind of a new side of backpacking I've never really done. Usually all my, you know, it's like, all right, buckle up for a couple hours on the trail, grind through it. And right now I can feel my boys getting wet. Instead, it's a very interesting contrast.
For whatever reason, when we planned out a dedicated backpacking trip, I'd prep my mind and body for long miles and a sustained suffering on a maintained trail. To be fair, that's all I've ever done when overnighting in the backcountry. Waist deep wading down this crystal clear river was like nothing I'd ever done. The sheer size and scale of this canyon was mind-bending, and the array of hues brought on by the natural splendor was a shock to the senses. It was rather hard to keep focused on that next slippery step with how distracting the never-ending canyon walls seemed to be. There was no dedicated trail, which makes total sense looking back. With the way these narrow watersheds run during both runoff and monsoon season, I have to imagine any sort of trail would just simply get washed away. Dealing with the thick brush and shifting rocks, it was no joke. Luckily, it didn't take us all that long to reach a remote section with a phenomenal campsite that we just could not pass up.
Yeah, this is about as good as it gets right here.
Yeah.
Luxury-wise, this is pretty nice.
That's what I'm saying, man. I just don't think we're in a very, very narrow canyon. There's nowhere wider than this that we're gonna find.
Yeah.
And as far as comfortable, already made clearing, it doesn't get much better than this.
We could grade this out pretty easily to make it flat enough, I suppose.
Exactly. Get a little stick action going, raise it up a little bit.
All right, well, time to make camp.
With an extra set of hands, essential camp chores could be completed at light speed. Without hesitation, we both jumped into our respective camp tasks. Jack was clearing out an even spot for the tents while I got to digging out what would be our fire pit. This beach we found was absolutely perfect for many reasons. One of the major being that we could shape the sand and loose gravel into almost anything we pleased. Be it level spots for tents or a perfect fire pit, all we needed to do was move a little sand. I found myself a wooden shovel which significantly sped up my digging, but like any good game of Minecraft, we needed rocks next.
Yeah, that's exactly why I didn't like that one up there, though, with the brush like that.
Yeah, that's fair. There seemed to be an abundance of both round and flat rocks all throughout this section of canyon.
That's like so flat. That's perfect.
More than enough for a robust fire ring, and both Jack and I managed to find the perfect rocks for sitting. Well, almost.
That could very well do the trick. Oh no! You had it! You had it all, Jack! Boy, I just love that new tent smell.
Oh, is that new?
Yeah.
Shelter was going to be next on the docket, and with how malleable the ground was, our tailored sleeping arrangements were easily made into something rivaling that of the most expensive Tempur-Pedic mattress. Last thing on the checklist was to stockpile a bit of water for later use, and with 2 folks filtering through the Grail, we had ourselves a healthy reserve in no time flat. Immediately after, I gathered up all the food and set it high up into a tree because bears and other critters will still run these canyon floors, and they don't need to be raiding our stash. In this kind of low pressure situation, it doesn't really matter what order you do it in, but for now, fire, shelter, water, and food were all taken care of. All that was left was to rig up the rods and find our first fish.
Perfect rod. Multifunctional. Thank you, Backcountry Skins.
I probably have enough food, the freeze-dried stuff at least, for like many days. Yeah, this is sweet. I gotta say, well, there's only been a few campsites I've never that I have like been kind of mid on. Most of the campsites I feel like I find I'm like, this is actually the best thing ever. It's like, oh, we've actually found the best place in the world.
That's a bigger fish.
Big flash down there?
Oh yeah. That was, I would say, like at least a 12 plus.
Like I said, there's some pretty nice fish in here. They hide.
There it is.
He was number 1.
Yeah, that's pretty. It's a nice fish, man.
Alright. Oh. Majestic. Very graceful.
Let's go, dude.
That wild rainbow was a great start, but this next fish was one I was hoping to see at some point during this trip. Jokingly referred to as the Verde trout, the round-tailed chub is native to the Colorado River drainage basin and can be found all throughout the Southwest. This is one of the few remaining native fish species able to compete fin to fin with the non-native browns and bows that have taken over many of the major systems like the one we were fishing today. As it swam back, Jack told me they use these little guys as keystone indicators for overall health of watersheds. Unfortunately, that would be the only one we could find during this particular trip. This creek, it was mostly filled with small to medium-sized wild rainbow trout, super colorful and more than willing to grab a dry fly or a small streamer. I mean, what more could you really ask for? Jack mentioned he would run into the occasional brown, but that required a bit more stealth and throwing some bigger hardware. This would be one of the many examples where, here in the Southwest, crayfish play a key role in feeding the larger fish in the watershed, so it was paramount to match the quote-unquote hatch to the best of our ability.
Another one. That's a good fish. Lots of brown. There you go. Where the opponent? There we go.
That's a good one to break the rod in on. Oh, I don't like the way he's... There's no way you die from that. There's no way.
It seemed a little too early to be,
I just don't get that, dude. You barely hooked him. Like,
when as far as his, and that's why I think he might recover here. It could be like shock or something. Well, our first brown is a little bittersweet. You know, I don't know what it was, if he hooked weird or shock or whatever, but he is not doing too well. We've tried to recover him here for a little while now, and he's just he's not taking to it. You can see his color's fading and his eyes are kind of gone. So we're gonna give him a bonk, put him in the creel. We plan on eating fish anyway. Not this beautiful brown, but you know, it is what it is. So I'm gonna give him a bonk off cam and we're gonna keep on pushing. All right, there's the first one for dinner.
This is the ugly side of fly fishing we all have to acknowledge, even though it's seldom shown. By no means am I happy this brown had to die, but you won't see me losing much sleep. We had originally planned on keeping fish for dinner anyway, and plucking out a few mid-sized fish can help with the overall health of a system. Plus, I think wild browns are some of the best tasting freshwater fish out there, so just know this non-native loss will not be in vain. Moving upstream, I was hoping to avoid that happening anymore, but we kept our fingers crossed we could run across some of the larger and more reclusive browns that were supposed to lurk in these waters. I'm not happy about this. Oh god, my knees. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So a little one came out and chased it, and something about like that came out and ate what was chasing mine. That was insane. That was a huge fish. With the shadows getting long and the bigger fish in the system evading us, we had a mostly empty creel that needed a touch more attention if we were to fill our bellies for the night. With the fishing in general being rather tough, we stopped big fish headhunting and buckled down for a few more decent rainbows. Downsizing the streamer certainly helped me get more bites, but none of the fish I found were worth eating. I was glad Jack was a bit more dialed in because he filled out the rest of the bag right as the sun decided to leave the canyon floor for the day.
Perfect. Nice. Way to go, way to go. With the amount of raccoon poop on that log, I'm gonna avoid cleaning them there. I think I'm gonna go
I was gonna say I wouldn't do it
to the current. Just gonna give it a whack with this little guy. I'm trying my best. I've never used it before.
Now what I did, just to kind of take some of the fishy taste out, is I will descale them a little bit.
That's pretty fair.
So, and surprisingly that brown didn't have a whole lot of scales, but you can see this rainbow.
Oh yeah, they're scanning.
Yeah.
Trusty K-boy.
We're back at camp. Jack, how was the fishing?
It was good. It was good. Could have been better. Could have been worse.
I fished like garbage. But we're back at the camp. We need to get some firewood. The fish are all cleaned up. Our hands smell fishy, and our stomachs are about to be full. But first, yeah, we definitely need to get some firewood for the evening, I should say, and yeah, keep this camp ball rolling.
Do you got the fire making tools you want?
Yep, I got everything I'll need.
Okay.
That's
what I was getting after.
We'll find out. What do you about pizza? Love it.
Yeah.
Depends on the pizza though. This is smart.
It's pretty neat, man. I am fan.
And yeah, it's just a matter of getting it moved. Trying to get big.
I think this one's so old they've switched up the packaging since. Like it's just like 2 or 3 years old.
That's fun.
Cheers, sir. Smoky cheers.
Oh, man.
Dry clothes and the warmth of the fire were an absolute luxury after being wet from the waist down for most of the day. With soft sand tickling the toes, the only thing left to do was usher in the sounds and smells of a backcountry dinner. Night in the canyon was coming on quick, but our bed of coals was plenty warm at this point. Now, some of y'all out there might be rubbed the wrong way at the sight of these lifeless trout wrapped up in foil, and when taking fish, context is key. This is a lightly traveled canyon, and as you can see, the overall fish size was slightly stunted. With limited predators, places like this have a tendency to become quite crowded with underfed and undersized fish. This sort of phenomenon is very similar to what happens in a lot of high mountain lakes out west, and like I said earlier, taking out a few of the mid-sized fish in the system can improve the overall health of the watershed, and when paired with lemon and butter, it's an absolute treat for the angler. Bag limits do exist for a reason, folks. So between the fresh trout, freeze-dried meals, and a staggering amount of marshmallows, we were eating like canyon kings. But with bellies full and eyes heavy, this day was certainly nearing its end.
All right, Jack. It does not seem like we're gonna stay here another night.
It's not looking good.
The fishing is a little bit to be desired, so
We've kind of pigged out on our extra food and a little bit of extra secret sauce.
There's ups and downs to leave.
Well, cheers. The burning nostalgia on the way down helped ease the muscle fatigue of a long, long day. Drowsy eyes didn't last much longer in the dying light of our secluded Red Rock Castle, so we retired to the tents in hope for slightly better fishing tomorrow. Swift as the twilight and sluggish as the dawn. Sunken deep down into the earth, these colorful walls were robbing us of important hours and valuable warmth. With shortened days, it might have been a good idea to push hard on either end, be it fishing into the night or waking up before the sun. But after that hellish hike in, sleep is probably more important. So to fight the cold, I shared a bit of breath with some of the lingering coals from last night. We were already late to rise, so there was no point in rushing. The fire would at least aid in shaking off some of the lingering chills of the night.
Sitting back trapped over here, so if I shift it around at some point in the night, put in a bunch of air to like heat up again, it's sitting back there. Yeah.
Needless to say, fingers and toes were mighty appreciative of the warm embrace, and it made breakfast and gear check a bit more manageable. Once its services were no longer required, Jack doused out the coals, and we were ready to begin our cycle day.
Okie doke. It is morning 2 here. The coals are out. We're good on that front, but this might be a shorter session. We're not too terribly sure what the fishing is going to look like, and over campfire talks, we I don't know. We think we might be wanting to pack out today, so we kind of preemptively packed this morning, and yeah, it'd be a shame to leave this awesome campsite, but if the fishing doesn't follow, then we got to keep going. So yeah, we're gonna keep at it, get going, get our lines wet, and fingers crossed catch a fish or two.
With the sun now high, our expectations were still relatively low. We both agreed to give the lower section a second look before pulling the plug and packing out. Leaving fish to find fish is truly a heinous crime when it comes to this silly game, and yet I do it all the time. So instead of breaking this cardinal rule right away, we buckled down and fished hard.
Oh yeah, that's a dimy little fish.
We both did our fair share of cold calling downstream because morning was still a good time to headhunt for these bigger browns in the system. This time around, however, it seemed like the wild bows were the only ones willing to pick up our line. Now, with their almost neon colors contrasting with the clear water, neither of us were complaining all that much about roping in a few more. Plus, we could at least rest easy knowing we did not get completely skunked for the day. Despite the fishing remaining somewhat the same, getting to experience a morning in a canyon like this was worth every step to get down. On our way back to camp, I did my best to soak it all in. The distant song of the birds emanating from the odd pockets of green and the babbling of the river in the background was a siren soundtrack echoing across the walls. The hot and cold air fighting for airspace carried those echoing sounds all the way up the canyon and back to our sandy camp.
Home sweet home.
Well, the morning session went about as good as what we expected. So it's time to get the tents, get the rest of the camp cleaned up, and I think we're gonna move to Plan B.
I hate the feeling of a second pack. Because the first pack is always very tight. Nice and organized, weight distributed correctly. All right, let's go.
Jack and I tried to remain as level-headed as possible about our extraction forecast. In theory, we should have plenty of time to pack out, drive to a Plan B, and then fish out the rest of the day. On paper, this seemed like a good idea, but I've got to admit, all the numbers and figures we discussed started to crumble under the weight of my heavy pack, and this right here is the double-edged sword of overpacking. With such a quick turnaround, my body wasn't exactly recovered from the initial hike in, and not long into this upstream march, I was already really feeling it. I'm pretty sure it was somewhere in between the alternating quad cramps that my mind just went completely blank as I did my best to crawl out of this hellish crack. Bear with me here as I try to explain this feeling. MMA is by far one of my favorite sports, and I'll go out of my way to catch every single UFC card I can. A phrase that's often used between both the fighters and commentators alike is biting down on your mouthpiece. Essentially meaning gutting something out, grinding it out, eating all of those punches so you can keep pushing forward and win that fight. This climb was about an hour of just biting down and grinding through. But somehow I managed to make it topside without falling back down or tweaking my back in some weird maneuver. So I consider that, in and of itself, a massive, massive win. I would hate to compare the silly things I do to something serious like mixed martial arts, but I think the analogy can somewhat translate the feeling. There's a certain shelf life to those hard-nosed fighters in the UFC that eat punches and keep stepping forward. They tend not to last long in the organization and oftentimes feel the compounding effects of sustained damage as they age. As we rolled up to our Plan B parking lot, I began to wonder how many more times I'd be able to rely on youth and brute strength alone to get me out of sticky situations. But like a cow with cud, that's a thought I might have to chew on a bit later, because for now, it was time to finish out our day.
Well, that is a lovely little brownie for this stream. It's a nice fish. Very surprised that he ate the dry, but very, very happy. I'm gonna let him go, and I'm gonna explain what dry I was using there, because for some of you that are new to the channel or first time seeing this stuff, I've got a pretty nifty little innovation that I use to run dry droppers. So let's get this guy back. This little yellow guy might look like a normal stonefly or hopper, big rubbery attractor kind of fly. But I tie these to be adjustable. So as you can see, this slides up and down. I've got my dropper here, but this can still slide freely along my leader and still is strong enough to pull out that very feisty brown out of some, I would say, pretty fast water. But as you know, Editing Mike will magically put up the videos here. We've got the how-to and then also the FAQs, so you can get all your fly out season adjustable dry dropper needs seen fit there. And yeah, I love this pattern. It does me well, and I think that was my first official one of the year, which is very exciting. So yeah, can't wait to catch some more. Let's keep moving up.
Really catching our stride at this Plan B location, we both finished out the day with some excellent small stream fish. Jack managed to trick one of the best rainbows of the day, and I must say, the dark hues and pronounced par marks had me swooning from behind the lens. And not long after that fish swam back, I capped out the day with a lovely little creek brown that was equally as beautiful, just in its own way. Rich buttery browns with a smattering of haloed red spots was quite easy on the eyes. Any further upstream, the creek looked like it was starting to get too small, so we made our way back to the cars, and Jack and I bid each other farewell. It was time to lick our wounds and replenish the gear. The following weekend would be coming on quick, and we had another big adventure planned out. Calls from the surrounding songbirds ushered in a new week here on the ranch, and I think it's safe to say that the canyon deep dive and small stream Plan B, it went pretty well. However, with my time being limited here in the Southwest, there was no time to rest. Responsibilities at my day job slowed down just enough by midweek to allow for a session on some local water. On my way out the door, one of the barn cats eyed me down from her leafy perch. Before she could hop down and get some chin scratches, I was off with the wind and on the road. With a lot of snow still capping the peaks and runoff plaguing any stream coming off of Baldy, I didn't really have high hopes for this session, but I hit the once familiar trailhead regardless of the risk. The once vibrant aspen had been replaced with drab surroundings and puddles of standing water. Quite the contrast from my autumn memories. I was at this very spot not but a few months prior, enjoying the true splendor of the changing seasons here in the White Mountains. I personally knew the elusive Apache trout swam in these waters, and I'd physically touched them for Pete's sake. Despite this irrefutable fact, the current conditions of the creek had me thinking there wouldn't be a single fish willing to eat for at least a few weeks. But since I was already here, it would be silly not to give it an honest shot and at least work on some runoff fishing skills. With nothing to show but a wet bug, I only had the patience for a few more holes before I was to call this mission a true bust. And right as filming fatigue and general hopelessness was starting to get the better of me, a faint tug at the end of my swing brightened up my day in a major way. This right here, folks, is a native wild Apache trout, one of the rarest trout species in the world, and boy howdy am I glad I was able to find one while I was here. This high water hero swam back to the tea-stained torrent just fine, and that right there, that was mission accomplished. If you want to learn more about these little trout, I'll go ahead and link a prior Arizona video down below in the description that will give you a bit more history on these special fish.
Well, another group of anglers decided to jump right in front of me. Maybe it's a miscommunication, but I think it's time to move downstream or switch up spots.
The feeling of getting high-holed on a long system like this was about as uncomfortable as the cold muck squishing between my toes. They seemed relatively new to fly fishing, so there was no point in berating their somewhat inconsiderate actions. It was just easier to leave. There wasn't all that much else to note about this particular adventure, seeing as my plan B was even more blown out. Again, just because I was in the neighborhood, I decided to go back and give it a quick stroll, despite the water levels reaching well past its banks. In reality, that one Apache trout was really all I wanted. This beautiful sunset and an evening revisiting old places was purely a cherry on top. That strong wind still carried the wrath of winter, but with each day, that sun was bringing a little more spring. The distant calls of returning songbirds was the telltale sign of warmer times to come here in the high country of Arizona. It was just a bit of a shame I wouldn't be around to witness it myself, but that's a regret I couldn't dwell on for the moment because another fishy weekend was well on the horizon and I needed to buckle down.
Well, folks, if you are seeing this, then that means the video is over. The last southwest sunset is slowly making its way to the other side, and all I have to say, like always, is thank you. Thank you so very much for sitting through and watching this video all the way through the end. It means the world to me that you guys like these videos, that you can relate and share these with your friends and kind of the similar experiences that my friends and I go through. I don't know, it's really cool. For me, it's about capturing these memories, but I'm so happy that there's folks out there who can, laugh along, enjoy it, and maybe learn a thing or two along the way. But folks, before I skedaddle, I just have to make a couple of thank yous, as always. Thank you to all the brands that support Fly All Season. Of course, I'd be doing this without them, but with them, it really helps as far as the gear, the information, all that. It's really great. So if you have any questions about what I'm using, how I'm using, check out the description. I keep them all down there. Discount codes too for the gear that I use. All great brands, all great people. You know who you are. Thank you so very much. And off of that, the Patreon folk, thank you so much. Again, it's amazing to me that there's people out there who are willing to send out a little bit of their hard-earned money to help make something like this happen, because it's a lot of work. Logistics and gas and gear, I mean, it gets expensive. So just know all of your very generous offerings are being used to its fullest to, yeah, bring you more stuff like this. So, folks, that is quite enough for me. I gotta book it before I'm hiking out in the dark. So, wherever you find yourself, be it in the beautiful Southwest or in your backyard, make sure to keep those feet in the water. And until next time, tight lines.
We were ghosts with arms open wide, but we floated away. A strange distant sea. Well, heaven grew the silver moon, made the ocean safe. I thought that I would feel brand new, but trouble's on the way. And I know that there's a solitary life that's filled with peace, and sometimes a man just needs